We have Jamie Gruber on the podcast today. So Jamie and I have known each other for, 5 years, something like that, between a couple different masterminds that we've been in. So to kick it off, Jamie, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, what kind of business / businesses you're involved in.
I am almost 13-year happily married man. My wife, Sylvia, and I met each other while working together in Boston. She actually worked for me. We have 2 young boys. Sebastian's 8, Julian's 5. I host the Tribe of Millionaires podcast. It's in partnership with GoBundance. I've been a member for 4+ years, and a lot has happened in my life that I credit GoBundance for. So I've partnered up and have done some businesses with them. So people get to know me through the podcast. When they know me and like me enough, they tend to join the GoBundance Emerge community, which I own. So GoBundance Emerge is sort of the feeder program for future millionaires. We create whole life millionaires, I like to say, and people will join that. From there, I'm partnered with Quantum Capital. We invest in value add, distressed BC class workforce housing, multifamily housing in Denver, Austin, a little bit in LA. And that's kind of the funnel of my business, if you will, or all of my businesses in one funnel. I did throw away $400,000 a year, throw away a bunch of unvested equity, probably $500,000 in equity that I just went back to the company because it was restricted stock units. They would vest every year, but there was always something that wouldn't vest. And yeah, man, I ended up going on that trip to Florida. I spent the month there. I got back and flew to Tahoe for a GoBundance event. And when I arrived home from that GoBundance event, it was March 12th, 2021, because I started on March 13th, 2021. I submitted my resignation.
When you that month you spent in Florida, how did the conversations go with your wife, and what were your thoughts like looking at your kids playing, on the beach in Florida as you're going through all of the stuff in your brain? Like, I would imagine you sitting there on the beach watching your kids. Like, now you're going 100 miles an hour trying to figure out what is this new path going to look like? How is this working? Like, what is my wife saying about this? Like, talk me through a little bit of that.
My wife is, and maybe it's the benefit of her background. My wife she grew up in the Dominican Republic. She didn't have much. I mean, and her bathroom was a hole in the backyard for a number of years of her early life. So she's always said it before even I made this decision. She was saying, "Hey, look, really, what's the worst case here? We got to downgrade. We got to sell our house, get a 2-bedroom apartment." She's like, "I mean, really, what's the worst case?" Now, not every wife or husband might think that way, right? You have a certain level that you aspire, and she doesn't want to go backwards, but she's just saying, "Hey, look, the chances of that are fairly slim." It was very peaceful as far as the decision. There wasn't a lot of, I told her when she got there, because again, they flew in, they got there after me. They flew in a couple days after I started driving. And she was like, "Okay, as long as you feel like we're ready to go, then okay, cool." So no questions there, no issues there. I got very conscious of the fact that I need to create a life outside of. So for context, I didn't have the passive income to walk away from the job. That wasn't my calculus. I calculated that I don't take any income from my properties at this point. I'm not taking anything out of it. They're cash flowing, but everything just kind of goes back into the account, right? But I was like, all right, well, I could take from my 5 units back in New York, the 2 duplexes and single family, the 16, 20, I could take $4,000 a month. And that was essentially going to cover base expenses for me, other than food and healthcare. But it would cover a house, car insurance, heat, electric, cell phone, Wi-Fi, basic, right? So I was like, well, all right, so we can cover that. I had $100+ in the bank. So I was like, wow, that's our burn account. So, I've got that over time if I need it. So I didn't have the passive income just to step away. So for me, it was like, all right, well, I just started Emerge. That wasn't cash flowing. It's a new business, right? We made a little money, but it was all going back into the business. So, what do I need to create here? As I go forward. So I probably got a little too busy that month looking at and talking about and having conversations about how I can build or what I can structure after I leave my job. But I was confident that I could. I was confident that, you give me 6 months without the job or a year without the job in the way, without the energy and the time spent. Oh my God, I can build everything I have going to, another level. It's funny though, what happens when you make a decision like that. So I made this decision and then 2 things happened. One, Quantum came along right in that time. So I met Mark Henteman. He's like, "Hey man, I'd love to have you partner up with me and be kind of a investor relations marketing guy on this general partnership team." And I mean, he's $150 million in assets at that point. We're over 250 now, but we closed on 7-8 deals in the last year. There's acquisition fees. I mean, I invest most of it back in. I'm fortunate that I can, but if I needed, there's acquisition fees that I could take right there. Yeah. The other thing is actually GoBundance came calling like, "Hey, you've got to merge. I just took over the podcast. So I just took over what was called the Go Abundance podcast. And the guy that ran it at the time, Chris, said, hey, we got all these members that are or potential members that no one's talked to. Like they're interested in joining Abundance. Like it's 10 grand or 15 grand to join. If you get these guys to sign up, I'll give you 10%. And I'm like, yeah, I'll talk to him. I don't even know what that feels like, but sure. So he gives me this list. And even though I had a day job, I was kind of done mentally. I would start calling guys like, just, hey, I saw you apply for GoBundance. What do you want to know? Kind of thing. And I ended up having really, really cool conversations with a bunch of guys. I wasn't selling anybody, but toward the end of the conversation, be like, oh, okay, so what do I have to do to sign up? I'm like, oh, do this, this, and this. And 17 people joined. So I made 20 grand sitting on the beach in Florida, right? With this non-effort of getting on the phone and just having cool conversations with guys like you. That was really all it was. And that was like all of a sudden an income stream. So for a few hours a month, I'd get on calls with people that were interested in joining Abundance, and I'd make anywhere from 5 to 25 grand, sometimes more, in a month that I wasn't expecting to make. So now I had this income stream. Now I had Quantum. Like these things kind of came when I cleared the thing that was blocking me in the universe, that was blocking energy from flowing my way. Might be a little woo-woo, I know, but I really believe in this, in the law of vacuum prosperity, meaning you can't have until you remove, right? You have to create a vacuum for good things to fill it. Just like you can't put a new couch where the old couch is until you remove the old couch, right? It's the same thing. You can't put new streams of income and new opportunities when you're blocked by blocking the opportunity with something that you have in place. For me, that was the job. So yeah, it was sort of a wash of a month in some ways. Yeah, we spent time on the beach. I wasn't overthinking it. I just sort of stuff opened up. It was like, I don't know. It's like one of those weird, you should be nervous moments that I wasn't nervous. I'm quitting my $400,000 a year job. Okay. And I wasn't nervous till 2 days before I actually resigned. That was the first time I felt nervous. Like, 32 days later, I didn't feel nervous a bit before that. So
that's phenomenal. Yeah. And I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it a billion times. Like, I think the number one relationship that you could have in your life, the number one choice is to have a solid spouse. One that's supportive, one that's by your side, one that's helping you through life, and it sounds like you have one that's by far very supportive of you and like trusts what you're looking at and what you're doing. I have a similar conversation with Raquel, with my wife, and like I told her, I said, "What's the worst case scenario? Let's say I failed miserably at every single thing that we do." I said, "You're still in the military. I still get disability pay. We'll make it just fine, and then I'll start something else. Like it is what it is. Like we gotta."
What did she say though when you first brought it up? What was her reaction?
So it was more of like what do you mean? Like you've got only X amount of time. So, but I think she knew it was coming.
Real quick, how much time did you have left before you would start getting the blue card and pension and all that stuff? How much time?
4.5 years.
Wow, that is close. That is close.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Years. But I think for about 3 years before that, though, the writing was already on the wall. Like she already knew. Like she could just see it in my face every day coming home from work. I was getting miserable. Dude. I wasn't happy, and then you add into that the like looking at my kids every time I had to go by, like, all right, I'll see you later. I'm going for another month here or another 2 weeks here or another whatever. And it was exhausting. I love being a dad. So to me, it was like, I am sacrificing what I love to do to go do something that is sapping every bit of joy I have in my life. Like I just, so I think for her, she was already ready for it. She wasn't at the point where she was miserable. She was at a good position in her life to be kind of in her career, I should say, to separate from the stupidity that I was dealing with, and not have to deal with the politics one more level up. So like she was sitting pretty well, and it was like, all right, well, I think it's just time. I can't keep doing this. But
I think 4.5 years. There's something in that though. I get asked this a lot. Like, how do you get your wife on board? And I thought about that question for so long. Like, trying to appeal to logic, I guess. And it doesn't work. And that's not because our wives are illogical, but they, in many cases, you'll hear this a lot, right? Like, oh, my wife grew up in X circumstance, doesn't want to go back there. Like my wife grew up in that circumstance and isn't afraid to go back there. But I get it. If you grew up in poverty or an abusive situation or just always the stress of we're just scraping by. I get why a wife or a husband or whomever would feel that way. And typically it's more the wife, just because I think that's more of a feminine energy thing than a masculine energy thing. Masculine energy is like, I can conquer, I can go, I can do. Feminine energy is more nurture and make sure, like, I got these kids, I want to make sure they're protected. It's just a different dynamic. But what I've arrived at Because I think about like whether my wife was just like this, hey, whatever you want, on board, maybe, but I may not be giving myself enough credit. And I think this is for creating this. And this is where I think when people ask, how do I enroll my spouse? I think this is the answer. And you just kind of alluded to it. No one can deny, no one, not one human being can deny when they see the look in somebody else's eye. Mm-hmm. You know, like if you were to see Mike Tyson before a fight in his heyday, no one can deny that someone's about to get hurt, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't have to say anything. He doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to show you. Someone's getting hurt. And it's the same thing, I think, when it comes to when you leave. In our cases, we built something and we had something that was sucking our energy, that was sapping, you know, the humanity out of us. For whatever reason, we allowed that to happen. If you've created something that your wife can see from afar, like, whoa, when he pivots to that, like, holy cow, she can't deny that. She won't deny that. You know, a wife, a feminine energy or whatever wants to follow a strong man. Whatever. I'm going to go Andrew Tate here, but you get my point, right? A strong man will lead and a strong wife will know when that man is ready to go. Like she understands that, right? Like it's the both of you. It's not like one has domain over the other. It's, hey, when the man is fully in his secure masculine, like I know the feminine energy can recognize that. So if you want to leave your job or change your life or do something completely drastic, move to another part of the country because you believe you should, and you're saying your wife's not on board, then I think you have to look inwardly and say, I'm not fully committed myself. I might seem like I am. I might feel like I am, but you're at 99%. You're not a target lock. When you're target lock, no human being can deny, okay, I see it. I see exactly where you are. And that's exactly what you just said your wife did. Your wife saw in you like, okay, it may not be, there might be like logistical stuff around here that doesn't feel very good. Income, blue card, all this stuff. But I can't deny this. I can't deny this energy I'm feeling from this guy. Would you agree?
For sure. Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that it even starts, if you ask me, how do you get them on board? I think it starts even at dating, right? Like, have you guys had the conversations that, you're comfortable with? Have you, throughout your marriage, have you guys been open and honest with each other and talking about these different things? When you start having issues with what you're feeling at work, have you been saying things like, does she know the feelings and that you're having about X, Y, or Z, like so that she can understand that dedication and that drive and, so that you can speak to her emotional side the same way that you're thinking about it logically? I was just having a conversation with Raquel yesterday about homeschooling. I think it's homeschooling. And she was appealing to some emotional stuff. And I was like, I need to reset my brain a minute because I can't think about the emotional side. My brain doesn't do that very well. But of course, that's hers does, which again, if you guys are open and honest with each other and having those conversations, then I can learn to appeal to that and understand where she's coming from, because I'm like Spock emotionally. Like he has one like emotion and it was his mom, right? For me, it's anything to do with my family. Like you bring that part into it, right? But to me, like that ownership, that buy-in starts at the beginning of your marriage. Like if you guys don't have that relationship that can support that sort of decision, you're not going to get the buy-in the second that you're trying to get the buy-in. Like this is it's just like look at your investor list, right? You're likely not going to get that investor to give you $500,000 the first phone call. Like you're going to have to get that buy-in over time. They're going to have some other relationship built there before you're going to get that in there. So that's my off the cuff thought process on it. But
no, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Doug Spence is with us today. Doug, please just kind of say hello, introduce your family, who you are, a little bit of background on you and your business, and we'll go from there.
My name is Doug Spence. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. Did my undergrad at Baylor University, and then joined the Navy back in 2009. Aviation guy, so went to flight school for a couple of years in Pensacola, and then selected Super Hornets and went out to Lemoore, California for a year, then moved out to Japan for 3 years, did 3 carrier deployments, then moved to Pensacola, Florida to be a flight instructor, did that for 3 years, which is also where I met my wife, Kate. She is a Navy JAG. We're both active duty Navy. then moved to San Diego in December of 2018. Was at SEAL Team 3 for 2 years, running their JTAC program, so Joint Terminal Attack Controller. And then now I'm back at Non-Flying Aviation Command, doing department head tour now here in San Diego. And then I got into real estate back in 2016 when I was in Pensacola. So that's where I bought my first property, really where I got addicted to real estate. And I've been surrounding myself with people that feed that addiction ever since, and just been doing real estate on the side while I'm active duty. And then we have our son, Calvin. He was born on Cinco de Mayo, 2022, last year. This is one thing I've learned, even just in, the first year, but like, I think I underestimated parenting, because I was like, there's plenty of parents, like, how tough can it be? There's tons of parents out there. It's easy to be a bad parent. It's really tough to be a good parent, because it's so much easier, like in your restaurant example, so much easier to just let them do whatever. But it takes a lot more energy, a lot more patience, a lot more thought to like do the right thing and say, no, you're going to sit here, blah, blah, blah. Because as a parent, you want to eat your meal when it comes. You don't want to wrangle kids as they're running out, but that's the right thing to do for everyone, not just for the other people in the restaurant, but like for the kids and all that. So it's a lot of energy, and it's a lot more time to be a good parent than it is to be a bad parent. No, I 100% agree with that. And it's, I've wanted to be a dad since I was like 13 years old. So, it's always been one of those things that I've just like, okay, I really can't wait to be a dad. And then when you become a dad, it's like, holy crap, this is a lot more, especially when you know that you have goals and you have a desire for certain things, and you're like, man, this is a lot of work, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. Like I absolutely love being a dad. I'd have 10 kids if my wife would let me, but she controls that factory, and I'm pretty sure it's getting shut down after the third one. So that's I don't want that many. I imagine it gets a lot better after, as they get a little bit older, but man, as that first year, especially the first 6 months,
it's tough.
It is tough.
Yeah, it's real tough. I am extremely blessed with my wife, because she, her thought process on it is oftentimes like, look, don't wake up in the morning, or don't wake up in the middle of the night. I'll take care of it. You've got nothing that the kid wants. Like, the kid only wants milk, and I don't have that. Despite what society may tell me, I can't breastfeed a child. Like, it's not going to happen.
That attitude.
No, not with this attitude. You're right. With enough hormones injected into me, maybe I can. But boy, what a defeatist attitude I have. But she's like, no, just get the sleep. Like, you're going to need it for the morning anyways. So, so she lets me get all the sleep. And now, at 8 weeks old, she just slept last night, like 7.5, 8 hours before she woke up. So I was like, well done, dear. Like, you're 8 weeks into this. You've already got her sleeping through the night. You had me sleeping through the night too. So thank you. Like,
that's amazing. That's amazing.
But I'll stay up with her though. If she's having a hard time going to sleep, I'll stay up with her. Right. Yeah. Because I haven't gone to sleep yet. But so I'll send her to bed, and then I'll stay up till like midnight, sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning. I'll fall asleep on the couch with her on my chest at like 2 o'clock in the morning, finally get her to sleep. But then she lets me sleep after that, So that's it goes right back to what you were talking about before, having that solid relationship, good communication between you and your spouse, and making sure that you guys are on point with all that type of stuff. And I think that just, if you're not in a good point before kids, I promise kids aren't going to help. Kids are going to make that worse. Right. So get yourselves in a good point where you have good communication already. You have the emotional intelligence to be able to communicate what you need with each other, and then bring a child into it. That the child's only going to make any of the problems worse.
Yeah, that's another, important theme with, in line with the whole podcast, your whole podcast, idea, or the concept of the podcast is like, the spouse, the wife is like, so critically important, because for both of us, your wife is, watching your kid, 8-week-old, and then, my wife is watching our, 13, 14-month-old now. So it's like, couldn't do this without them. So, big shout out to the spouses for making it all possible, because if it wasn't for her, you wouldn't be doing this podcast right now, probably.
Oh, you're darn right. Yeah.
So, yeah. So big.
If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't even have the thought process to do this podcast. Right. So,
you wouldn't know what a podcast is.
I know. No, it's you're probably not wrong. I can't express how important it is to like. I forgot who it was that talked about it, but like I think it was like Jordan Peterson or somebody that like one of the number one decisions you could possibly make in your life is choosing the right spouse.
Yeah.
And especially military folks, I'm sure you've seen it a billion times. Like we used to call them tech school marriages because like when you're enlisted, you go through basic training and then you go to your tech school for the Air Force side is what we called it. I think A school is what the Navy calls it. And so you go through our tech school marriages. Like people get married at 18 years old, 19 years old in tech school. And then before you know it, 5 years later, they're divorced. If they even made it to 5 years, they've already got 2 kids together in that 5 years. And now there's these 2 children growing up without their father in the house. But maybe there's a stepfather now around. And like the amount of divorces that we saw was make the right decision on your spouse to begin with, and then your future will be infinitely better if you make the right decision up front with that.
Yeah, I think building on that, what Jordan Peterson said about how significant of a life decision it is, the spouse, and how people need to think that through. But not only are you marrying your spouse, you're marrying your spouse's family. For all the goods and others, because every family has their pros and cons, and every family has issues as well. So I think that's important for people to realize that aren't married yet. Get to know the family, and because you're marrying into that family as well. So it's important to consider, because people may think like, oh well, whatever, that's just her family, that's her parents. Like I love her, whatever. So but they're your family now too. So for better or for worse. So
yes. Like it or not, you're stuck. It's my wife was surprised because like my family, like we all get along really well. We love hanging around with each other. Not the way they look at it is not the typical, because she's Latina. So again, her mom born and raised in Cuba, dad born and raised in Spain. Very, very, very family oriented type of family. Like everything is about the family, which is the same way that my family is, but they don't perceive a lot of American families that way. It's like, all right, 18, get the heck out of my house. Right. Like you're done, go away. Like see you at Thanksgiving. Exactly. Yeah. Thanksgiving and Christmas. Other than that, but that's not our family at all. Like her family still every Sunday, grandma would be cooking a meal and everybody would come over and eat the meal on Sundays, so it was a blessing to find a family that did that type of stuff. Like the very first time I met her family, like they had a pig roast, and I was like a whole pig, like this, like made with, oh man, it was phenomenal. And I said, okay, I got to figure out how to marry this woman. Like I don't know how we're going to do it yet, but that's got to happen. Like that
was a smart move on her part too. I'm sure that was strategic.
Yep. Key to a man's heart is through his stomach. So
she tricked you good.
Worked out well. She did. Dagnabbit. She hasn't done a pig roast yet. It's always,
where's
the pig roast? I do need to build a pig roasting station in the backyard though, because man, that is so daggum good. Oh my word, it's phenomenal.
That's a good, it's good presentation as well when you're having people over, more so than just aluminum tins of food.
I know, right? Yeah. You just pull a whole pig off of there, and it was a lot of fun doing that. Though it takes all day, but man, it's so much fun.
Yeah,
because it's I love barbecue anyways. So doing anything over fire is what I'm all about. So I've been a pyro since I was a kid. So anything with fire, I'm there. We have on Tim Vest. He's an entrepreneur, dad. Let's start off just, Tim, you telling us a little bit about yourself, telling everybody who it is that we're talking to today, your family, your business, or businesses in your case, and then we'll kind of go from there.
I have a company called Harvest Properties Group that I founded a while back. We purchase and operate real estate, mostly in the multifamily and triple net space. And primarily in the Carolinas, since that's where I'm located. So North, South Carolina, and Georgia is where we mostly do what we do. I'm also a co-founder of Making Moves Real Estate Coaching with my business partner, Tim Vitale. We coach folks on real estate, kind of getting that first big deal across the finish line, if you will. I have a podcast and a small group called Barbaric Yacht that I founded that's focused on working with folks, kind of getting through the entrepreneur world and kind of making your own voice known.
It sounds like your daughter Peyton was born, 2008, 2009?
2008. Yep.
2008, right? So that's right around the time you started looking at real estate, and then she's 8 years old by the time that you decide that that's what you want to do. Was that helpful in part of your decision making? Like when you became a father, like how did that kind of go into your calculus?
Yeah, a little bit. There was definitely this idea of like I wanted to build something to either leave to her or build some sort of legacy to show her. I always kind of feel like my mom and dad's legacy to me has been how to work hard, right? Like how to work hard, how to go after something. Mm-hmm. And then I think, what I want to kind of show her is that you can make your own way, right? Like you don't have to go work for somebody else, right? Like if you got it and you want to do it and that's your dream, go chase it. And don't let somebody tell you that you can't.
Yeah.
And that's, that was definitely, she was definitely a driving force behind that. And then two, the other piece of it was when I say I was miserable, I was miserable.
Yeah.
And, my wife, God bless her, kind of pulled me aside and was like, you just got to go. Mm-hmm. She's like, you're no good for me. You're no good for her. You go do what you got to do. Right. And, so that was kind of a driving force as well.
Nice. I mean, I think that's first a good on your wife for, saying it and calling you out and like being supportive in that way. Like I would imagine it's a much more difficult thing when your wife's not as supportive. But like, I know that it sucks for you right now, but we still need this or we still need that. And it's just having those conversations and knowing you have a supportive wife is, I would imagine, I know because my wife's extremely supportive too. Like I left the military after a long time. I've been in the military without a retirement. So, and my wife was like, all right, let's do it. Cause she knew that I was in that same boat. I was extremely miserable.
I can't imagine not having that.
Yeah.
Like I'm extremely fortunate. It sounds like you are too.
Yeah.
My mom was that way with my dad. Like they just had that relationship. It was like, okay, let's do it. Right. Mm-hmm. Wait a minute, we're going to pick up we're quitting our really nice jobs in Texas and we're going to quit and move to North Carolina with no plan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're doing, right?
Yeah, that's
what they did. And my wife's that way too, right? I mean, she just kind of looks at me and she's like, I trust you, I trust you. Go do it. And I mean, and we do it. We do that for each other. She walked in, she wouldn't mind me saying this. I remember one day I'm sitting in my office working, and I hear her car because she works. She's very successful in the corporate world. She works, and I hear the car pull in the garage, but she doesn't come in the house. And I'm like, what is she doing out there? So I walk out there. She's literally sitting in the car bawling. She is so sick of her job. She said, it's so stressful. And she had already kind of said that to me in 2008. I think this was like 2016, 2017 when she was like that. And she walks in the house and she's like, I can't do this job anymore. And I just looked at her. I was like, all right, cool. Don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Like do something else. And like everything else, like my parents, it's like, you're not going to quit and then just sit around the house, but get a plan together and let's get the heck out of that thing. Right. Yeah. And that's how we've been with each other. So people who don't have that, I feel really, really bad.
Yeah.
Cause I've had buddies who are like, man, I hate my job, but my wife tells me I can't quit. And I'm like, that sucks.
To me, oftentimes I feel like that's a sign of a lot more other things going on. Like, I mean, there's probably been some lack of communication in various other parts of their life, and they're not as open with each other as maybe they should be. And this is also very generalization, but, sure. It's, I think that the healthiness of the marriage creates healthiness in the kids, creates healthiness in the communication, to me, it all starts at the husband and wife. If they're, if they've got a healthy relationship, being able to do all these things, and like the support that they give each other, like makes a massive difference. But there's also a lot of fear-based stuff in there too, right? Like they could have a really healthy marriage and healthy stuff, but if they're full of fear on, well, you can't quit because what's going to happen to this or what's going to happen to that, and it's all fear. Like it might have no effect on it might not be the marriage health, but more just the mental health of each other as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely there for sure. I like to think that I got a decently level head on my shoulders, and a lot of that came from basically being in a very stable family. My parents were high school sweethearts, and to the day my dad died, they were nothing but devoted to each other. So, that definitely growing up around that made a huge difference. I think my brothers would tell you the same thing. I think it also kind of set an example of what we looked for. I think it absolutely set an example of what we looked for in our own marriages, our own relationships.
I have a fellow veteran, father, real estate investor, business-minded guy. We got Stu Grazier on the podcast. Stu, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little about your family, a little bit about your business, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Stu Grazier. I am a husband to my beautiful bride, Crystal. We've been married. August will be our 15th-year anniversary. And then we have 2 amazing children. Her name is Collins, and a 5-year-old son. His name is Wells. Or if you ask him, he's 5.5. I've dedicated my life to really being the best husband, the best father, and just the best leader that I could possibly be in the community. I'm a veteran. I retired from the Navy after 20 years of service. I flew helicopters for about 10 years, and then I transitioned and flew C-40s, or like a Boeing 737. And then lastly, like you said, real estate investor, own multiple businesses. Started doing investing when I was right out of college in flight school in Pensacola. I started investing in real estate, and I've tried about every asset, every niche, every strategy that I could possibly do. I've failed a lot. I've learned a lot, but somewhere along those lines, I've found some success in a few things too.
You were really making a big impact here at 15 years.
Well, it's funny you say that. I mean, it's very common for divorce to happen. I mean, it happened in my family when I was a kid with my 2 parents, and I think the stats are something like 50% of first marriages end in divorce now, or maybe even higher than that, and then it just goes up from there. Second marriages goes up from there, and third marriages, and I think it's kind of like, I don't know, kind of the cool thing to do now is this. Like, if this one doesn't work, go find another one, and I 100% disagree with that. And there's obviously challenges with any intimate relationship, and it's important to me, and that I focus there and be intentional with making sure I can show up to be the best husband I could possibly be. So,
for sure,
we have a podcast as well. And we had 2 guests on our podcast, and they were both at 40 years of marriage. So nice. I think that's pretty impressive. Right?
Yes, it is.
Obviously, that's a goal of ours for sure. But there's a lot that happens within those 40 years. So always good to surround yourself with other men that can kind of lift you up and show you some things to do so you can make it to 40.
So Joe Wexler on the podcast, he is a good buddy in GoBundance. Joe, I want you to start, kind of just give me a little bit of background on you, your family.
Joe Wexler. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. Been married to Sarah that we're coming up on 15 years this fall. So suddenly 15 years. We have a 10-year-old son named Ben and an 8-year-old daughter named Genevieve. And as you can imagine, those ages are very busy, and we're fortunate to be able to put a lot of energy towards them. I own a handful of small businesses. I spent a lot of my time before we had kids in management consulting, and I was traveling all over the world 100% of the time. And once kids started coming, realized that wasn't really sustainable for the way we wanted to live as parents, specifically me. My wife, she kind of just like reinforces and this, I've heard other people talk about this separately, like just reinforcing each other as individual parents and people, and having the kids see that is really important. So me showing appreciation for my wife for making dinner or setting up an event for us to do, and having my kids see me show that same appreciation. And then my wife does a great job of recognizing me as a dad and as a business owner and a husband, and they see that too. And like, I think that's going to be pretty impactful for them over the course of their lives. So
I would certainly imagine. Yeah. It always breaks my heart to see couples, like I don't mind some minor arguments for the kids. I think the kids need to be able to see my wife and I kind of dispute a little bit and then come to an agreement at the end of that,
again,
without anger.
Same thing.
But it always hurts me to watch like almost knockout, drag out type arguments in front of the kids and the way that they act. And like, you're like, what are you teaching your kids when you do that? Right. Like you should be showing your kids a good example of what it means to be a husband and wife. And, like, I don't know. It breaks my heart. So like a lot of times, like if my wife and I are going to have like a conversation, what we try to do, like if it's going to be in depth, like the kids see us go into another room, we have a discussion, we figure it all out. And then we come out unified. Like, hey, this is our decision. It's not mommy deciding this or daddy deciding that, or, oh, mommy won that argument. It's none of that. This is our decision. Like we want this to be a mutual thing, that they always see that that husband and wife, while they may not agree on everything, they can come together and agree on it and move forward. And to me, I think that's also helped me in business too, to kind of step aside and go, okay, well, let me look at what this looks like with my partners, right? Like exactly, step aside, let's talk to my partner about this, figure out what we're going to do.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, honestly, having a short temper is something I've dealt with my whole life. And man, I haven't yelled at my kids all year, so I track it, because I noticed myself being quick on that over the last couple of years, and they're just kids, man, like letting them get under my skin and reacting very quickly and yelling. And man, every time you do that, I just felt so bad. So I kind of made a resolution this year not to do that. And it just, they notice it. And my wife's like, man, you're so much more patient than I am.
That's awesome, though. Well done on noticing it and then taking some action to correct it. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not perfect. My wife and I argue too, right? But and I definitely have less patience sometimes with my kids than others. But at least recognizing that I was yelling and that didn't feel good and that doesn't feel good for them, and then taking action. I'm pretty proud of that. But it also came from a place of it was a defect of mine.
Yeah,
probably too strong a word, but a behavior that I was exhibiting that I didn't want to.
The reason that I'm a dad is because of my dad. So it seemed to be pretty fitting to have him be the first person that I chat with on this. So a little bit about us. Well, first off, that's my dad, Tim. Say hi, Dad.
His dad.
There he is. Like it or not, he's stuck with me.
Mom, she grew up, youngest of how many?
12.
And she's number 12. So she had a large family influence. So your mom helped me to mold into a good dad too. And she reminded me from time to time of my responsibility.
Yeah, I think that's what a good wife is going to do and a good mom is going to do is will you keep each other on track and doing the right things and making sure, hey, like, if you're honest with each other, helping each other kind of, hey, you screwed this up or you did, or, once in a while,
well, maybe that route shouldn't have been taken.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then let's think about that before we do that again. Whether it's going to get a credit card, it could be something that simple.
Mm-hmm.
But the influence of dads, you and I, we generally get the final say as dads. But I sometimes bow down to the needs of mom as well.
Yeah.
And the wife as well. They used to say, a happy wife is a happy life.
Yeah.
Spouse is a happy house. And this is a very happy, way, way better than I expected.
Oh, for sure.
Way better than the families I was exposed to, my family, how any of their retirements worked out. Going 2 years now, next week, I've been retired.
Yay.
I never expected these 24 months gone.
Yeah.
Just gone. And I'm kind of sort of a selfish, not with the family, but with my friends in different states and between the military and I've been selfish with my family and me down here. I think that's why I'm happy. And dads need to do that once in a while. Just don't spend so much time with so many people that you got so many feelers out there that you've taken time away from your kids or your spouse. It's up to you to figure out which direction it's going to go. And I knew from my personal experience, I needed a new direction. And Mom and I, we were public servants, payday to payday. And then you met the correct woman who changed your basis, your future.
So, Sergio, welcome to the podcast. Happy to have you. If you can, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then we'll jump into being very dad focused.
Cool. My name is Sergio Altamari. I'm based out of Philadelphia. 47 years old. Got a little girl. She's about to be 6 on March 11th. I'm a reborn, recareered over and over again. Had spent 22 years working for the Federal Reserve, had a day job, launched a company in the meantime. We're in self-storage, syndication, moving more and more towards larger private equity. My whole objective in life is to find that right amount of balance between creating legacy wealth and doing what I enjoy, which is now building a company and spending as much time with my family, while also doing my best to create or at least allow for my child to be, develop her own way and kind of learn from my mistakes, things that I wish that my parents did or didn't do. And, along the way, just enjoy the ride and the journey.
Because you're running a business. Your wife is involved in the business as well. So you guys both lead a company and have multiple employees, plus you're, being parents together. Tell me a little bit about that dynamic and how that kind of works with husband and wife running a business and husband and wife running a family, and how they kind of interact together.
Yeah, it's certainly not for the faint of heart and not easy to do. I think over the years, once we started, it was always important for us to make sure that we have a lane and kind of veered into different lanes and together many times. And, as we've initially, like any company, you start with both of us doing everything and kind of like, whatever needs to be done. And now that we have a larger team and through trial and error and through, business practices, coaching, and what have you, core focus be and where should it continue to evolve and grow? And going back to me being that leader, naturally I play CEO, and I say play because I still don't know what, it's like a game, right? So, and then for her, it's again following her passions and where she gravitates to. So it's a lot of I look at it as it's not always about what needs to be done, but what are you doing? And whatever you are doing is probably more indicative of where you should double down and spend more time. And now I say that with the caveat that is an evolutionary process, and that as the company grows, then my role kind of changes and needs to grow with it. I'm a natural technician, so I can't be in systems for the company to be successful. I think at home, and our relationship is really anchored in communication, and that's communicating through certainly language and talking a lot. Our essentially our drive into drop Stella off at school and into the office is a business meeting. Our drive home is typically a business meeting. Even sometimes at dinner, it turns into a business meeting. It's very important that we are, number one, is that we're constantly talking about why we're doing what we're doing, and it's not about money for us. It's never been. And it's all about, again, following what we're passionate about. We're passionate about contributing, sharing, and impact. And our business and our company is just a vehicle there. And we happen to choose real estate and now self-storage just because it's got characteristics of a lot of cool things. It's business, it's hard assets. It's all about compounding wealth. That's a conversation for another time. But it really comes down to being aware of constantly communicating. If we have disagreements, knowing that there's that's going to happen, knowing that just being mindful of how we're communicating. Is it perfect? No. I'm just as guilty. If I get into a mood, it's not going to be pretty, but it's like the continuous growth, just being aware of it, and really just trying to be better and incrementally better. I know that if I have an emotional reaction, that's probably not the best time to talk about something. So the personal growth journey, we're both on it. We both have coaches, and that's probably the hardest thing is you have to go find people that are just going to give you honest answers, and evaluate you and what you're doing, and have a level of experience that you can have confidence that you're going to learn from. So then obviously there's the interpersonal relationship that's not about business is critical. Sharing and making sure that we're constantly on the same page with Stella and what we're looking to teach her, and how do we reflect.
One thing that I listened to a little bit of Alex Hormozi on the business side of the house, and Alex and Layla Hormozi, they started off as sort of dating and then turned into business partners. And one thing that he talks about is you kind of hit on it a little bit is knowing where your roles are, right? One thing he always says is like there's too many spouses that try to fit their spouse into the business, as opposed to you're a perfect fit for this spot in the business. Let's take it. Not like they just want to include their spouse in the business, and if it's a fit, it's a fit. If it's not, it's not. But when you try to force it, it ends up being an issue, right? Totally. Because it's not going to be exactly what you're looking for. It's not going to be whatever. So you'd mentioned like even being passionate about the thing that you're doing the most, and you're passionate about, just like that's where you should double down on, right? And that should be a sign, I think, for any of us, right? Because my wife's getting ready to retire in 2 years. I'm going to keep on saying this out loud over and over and over again to force her to do that. I'm sabotaging every chance I can to make sure that she doesn't promote to the next rank. But so when she retires in 2 years, like she talked about being a part of business. Like, okay, well, we need to have a strong conversation about that. Does it make sense to have her in the business? Does she actually want to be, or is it just because she sees me doing it, or what is it? It seems as though you guys have kind of figured some of this out together and figured out like where your guys' roles are. Dave Aheimer is my guest today. Dave and I are in an accountability pod together, in a group together, and he is another, of course, entrepreneur and dad. So I wanted to bring him on. So Dave, if you can, give a quick introduction about yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do as a dad and an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's fantastic. My name is Dave Aheimer. I am a dad, an entrepreneur, a member of GoBundance, a husband, and a willing participant in an amazing family who has absolutely saved me from myself. So I've been an entrepreneur longer than I've been a dad. And when my little guy came along, I remember having a very distinct moment of clarity at an entrepreneurs organization event in Ohio, right outside of Cleveland, where I had to make a decision about redefining my win. And whether or not my win would be my business or my newly born son, who was in crisis and in distress. And so it was an absolutely life-changing moment for me to make the decision to make my son and my family my win.
I want to rewind back to that 2019 timeframe, right? So Jonathan was born, what, 2016?
16, yeah.
Math is good. 2016. Jonathan's 3 years old. Business starts really hurting. Talk to me a little bit about the struggles in the business and what that did with the family, and how you kind of still were able to keep some sort of a semblance of a balance, or if you were at all even able to keep some sort of semblance of a balance.
I'd say that I could have handled that better. There's no doubt about that. At the beginning of 2018, I made a choice to separate myself from the day-to-day operation within the business, and I brought in a president to run that organization for me. And this guy, this is on me. At the end of the day, leadership and the organization and how the organization performs, it's on me. I didn't give him the right training, or I abdicated responsibility instead of trust and verify, or whatever the case may be. We suffered a pretty significant loss in gross revenue, and that gross revenue caused the business to contract. And anybody who works in internet retail will tell you it's a momentum machine. Mm-hmm. And you got momentum going up, you're doing awesome. You got momentum going down, it's really hard to change it and pull it around. And that gentleman left the business after just 1 year of employment, and walking into 2019, I made a decision to come back in and take a different hand. And I tried to spin up a different business inside of that business. And where we were doing canvas wall decor, I decided that we were going to do framed under glass, and it seemed like a pretty similar product to me. Short stories, spent a couple $100,000 like getting a new product line up and running and equipment, and ultimately this part of the business failed. And the other part of the business was momentum in the wrong direction, with the compounding effect that brought me to a place where I was having, long days, sleepless nights, overeating, not caring for myself appropriately as far as like my morning routine was concerned. And it's really unfortunate, Adam, that, and maybe some of the people out there can understand what I'm talking about. But for me, when I'm having this kind of difficult time and all of this stress, then I tend to take it out on the ones that I love the most, which doesn't make any sense at all. Like, it's not a rational thing to do, but I'm on point and trying to do all of the things and showing up and holding on and not letting go. And I come home and I get too easily frustrated by a comment from my wife, or frustrated for any number of reasons. And it's a really difficult time in my family. This is where I really need to give the credit to my wife, because she is a kind and patient woman. And she showed up and she did her job by hanging on and not letting go, because a couple of times there, if she had let me walk away, I might have done so and folded under the stress, but she refused to let me walk away. And she was as she so often likes to refer to it, as I'm the CEO of business and finance, and she's the CEO of the family and spirituality. And she really stepped up as a leader in our family to keep us together. And so that became very important. And for me later on, when I really fully appreciated just how much she had done for the family, and kind of a, slap in the face reminder to make sure that I'm treating her appropriately, that I'm honoring her and making sure that I make time for her. And our relationship has improved dramatically with the sale of the business and with the pandemic, and spending all of that time together. I know there's a lot of folks out there who had really hard times in their marriage because they're not spending time with their spouses, and now they're stuck with them, and they find out, oh yeah, I guess we don't really work well together anymore, or, we don't really get along as well as we thought we did. We had this amazing opportunity after our hard experience in 2019, where we learned to appreciate each other with taking date nights once a week. We bought this little deck of cards that were date night questions, where we'd ask one another questions and get to know one another better during our once a week date night, and making sure that was a priority and going into building that foundation. And that's her. It's the stuff that she came up with. I'm lucky to have that kind of support, Adam. I got to tell you.
It's like God designed it to have you guys work together. And,
sure did.
Have husbands and wives do things together. What do you know? That's crazy.
What do you know? It's almost like a system.
It's almost like a
system
that,
where you get like a partner. Yeah. And, thankfully she's my opposite in all things, because if she was anything similar to me with my drive, determination, and ambition, it would be something like Highlander, only one can stay, only one remains. There could be only one.
John, I want you to do a quick introduction of yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what kind of business stuff you're in, and tell me about your family as well.
My name is John, originally from New Jersey, dad of 2 kids, a 6-year-old girl and a 4-year-old boy. Husband to my wife, Sana's, and we live in South Florida now by way of Los Angeles. So we lived in Los Angeles for about 5 years, and a fur dad too. I got a little dog named Wilbur. So family of 5. I'm involved in real estate. I still have a W-2 in the data world. So I'm a techie and, doing my best to balance everything. I always knew that I wanted to be a hands-on dad, because I never had the parents at my basketball games, at my soccer games growing up. So I knew that when I became a dad, I was going to be extremely active, extremely hands-on, because I knew that I craved that as a child. Like, all the other parents are at the soccer games on the sidelines, bringing orange slices, and I never had that. So I did know that I wanted to be active and hands-on. But having the relationship later with my father, that actually helped me become a better husband. So, because I realized it wasn't until I had the relationship with my father afterwards, I realized, it was never going to work between you and mom. Like, they're just two different people, oil and water. Like, it was just never going to happen. But as a child, I didn't understand that, because when you're 6, 7, 8 years old, you don't understand the dynamic of adults co-living or coexisting. Yeah. So I realized I did have a lot of resentment growing up. Like, oh, you just couldn't make it work. You just couldn't stick around. Was it my fault? But then I realized, I'm like, oh man, I don't even know how they lasted the 6 years that they did last, let alone forever. So I think once I became adult, that's where a lot of that, I realized that, like, okay, it's really important who you pick as a partner. It's really important that you guys have the same parenting mindset, that you want to, parent children the same way, and you have the same goals and the same values, or else it's not going to work. I don't want just the relationship with my kids to improve. I also have to prioritize my wife, but I also have to spend time with my kids, and I got to put food on the table, right? And I also need to sleep. So it is a constant struggle. And this is something that my wife and I acknowledge, that, like, listen, it's hard when you have multiple kids, and you're trying to get things done, and she has her career and I have my career. And then we have to come together, and, we can't just, disregard the kids. And it's tough to get a sitter. It really is. We don't have any family here. Her family's in Sweden, my family's in New Jersey, and we live in South Florida. So the struggle is real when it comes to the balance, at least for me. So I know that I've tried to incorporate like a sacred Sunday, right? Where Sunday is like no business. It's just family time. Incorporating the lunch dates and the dinner dates once a week. Going out with other couples every other week. Things like that I've really tried to implement and really be consistent with. And we do travel a lot. So I think that it's easy for me to get lost in the traveling, to be like, oh, well, we can't do this because, we're going here. Or, oh, hey, we can't do dinner dates because we're doing this. And don't want to be that guy that gets caught up in the day-to-day life, and I push everything else aside. I really do want that balance. And I believe that was my word of the year, or my theme of the year, when we spoke, that balance is the thing that I'm craving, right? I'm not worried about scaling my businesses. I'm not worried about those things will come. But I need to really focus on the balancing. And again, so to answer your question, how do I balance? I don't feel like I do a great job at it. Yeah. And it's something that I struggle with. I feel like I'm doing an okay job at it, where my wife doesn't hate me, my kids don't hate me, and my business is still thriving.